Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from SimpleProgrammer.com. So I did this video where I talked about, what was it? Man, I can't even remember what this video was on. Let me see. Why can I zoom out? What was this video? It was something about... I know what it was. It was like, do you need to be good looking as a guy? Like, do you need to be attractive? Like, does looks matter or something like that? You can check out the video here. All right. So, I get this comment on the video, okay? And this guy said, "Ma bro, I would really appreciate if you make a video about how you went from fat guy to bodybuilding guy." This is from Carlos Garcia. So, in that video, I had this like before and after picture where I showed myself, you know, maybe we'll show the pictures here of me fat, kind of ugly, nerdy, pimply face, kind of John to me, that I am now, you know, the stud that I am now. So a lot of you are like, what the fuck, dude? Like, there was a lot of comments on that, and this is where this comment came from. And so I thought I'd talk about this a little bit, address this, answer this question of how I went from fat guy to bodybuilding guy. And I'd have to tell you my whole life story to really get into the weeds here, but I'm going to give you sort of the short, condensed version, and maybe I'll do some more videos talking about some more aspects of this, right? So, let's see, where to begin? Where should we talk about? So, the transformation is not exactly what it appears like from those two pictures. I actually went through multiple transformations in my life. And I'll say too, I want to say this by saying that most of the transformation that's occurred in my life have not been physical in nature. They have been mental, psychological in nature, and the psychological changes, the inner changes, are the changes that manifest themselves outwardly, right? You will always manifest the reality externally of what your current inner reality is. So what you believe about yourself, how you feel about yourself, what your perceptions are, your self-identity is, that will determine what your external reality is. It really will. Not just from your physical reality of your body, but also your environment, your financial situation, your relationships, all of those things, right, that exist outside of you are influenced greatly by what is inside of you. So change begins internally. You change mindset, and then that becomes outward. So to give you a little bit of backstory, I, as a kid, right, I was very shy, very lazy. I've talked about this before. And I eventually ended up becoming, like changing who I was, like deciding, I've told this story, you can listen to the story here on the 5 things 5 soft skills every software developer should know, and I talked about that in this talk about that moment, that experience I had, but I'll give you a quick rehash. Basically, at one point when I was around, you know, in high school, I had this mindset. I woke up one morning and I said, well, why not me? Like, why can other people like do these things or be these things, right? And I was kind of this dork. I was kind of lazy. I was, you know, overweight and out of shape, and I wasn't athletic, and I didn't have any style, and, you know, girls didn't like me, and all these things. I had this whole list of like being this dork and nerd, and I said, why me? Why not me? Why can't I just be what I want to be? And so I envisioned in my head who I wanted to become, the best version of myself possible. I started pretending like I was that person. I started acting that person, like that person, and I eventually became that person. It took time. I'm still in the process of it. I'm always in the process of it. I'm always envisioning who I want to become, stepping into that role, pretending like I'm already that person. But that was sort of the hack that I discovered in life, right? When I discovered that, I didn't immediately have all the changes. I didn't become the person I am today. Or you can see just in my videos in the past 4 or 5 years how I've changed drastically as a person, right? But I've had so many transformations in my life, from fit to fat, from fat to fit, right? From all of these type of things based on what was going on internally as I've torn apart my psychology and myself and rebuilt it up in different ways, okay? And hopefully, in most cases, with a stronger foundation every time, right? At least I know that's where I'm going now. It might not have been where I was going before, but again, I don't want to make this too long. But essentially, after that, what happened was at least in my high school days, I enrolled in track, in wrestling, football. I started to actually visualize myself as an athlete. I said I can be, and I started becoming an athlete, and I'd never really done physical activity in my life. I started lifting weights, I started running, I started, like I said, doing track, did pole vaulting, I did wrestling, right? I did the football team. I didn't end up staying on the football team because I had so many other activities going on, but I ended up doing that, okay? And I ended up changing how I dressed. I ended up changing how I talked and what I thought about myself. Again, not as confident as I am now. Definitely had a lot more deficiencies, but I stopped being lazy. I stopped, you know what I mean? Like, I changed a lot of things about myself. So eventually, what ended up happening after I graduated high school is that I got a little bit more into fashion, and I had started looking good, right? I started to shape my body, and I got approached by a modeling agency, and I became a model in a modeling agency, and I did some acting as well. And so I got signed on with an agency actually in Costa Mesa, where I had moved to. If you followed my career story, but you can check out the career story here. This is kind of the backstory that I didn't talk about, in that I ended up going and signing with this agency that was in Costa Mesa around the same time that I took this job with doing contracting for Xerox, this $75 an hour job. I was 19 years old. It was awesome. Again, you can check it out in that career story video, but that's where I was right at that point. And I've got some modeling pictures. Well, maybe we'll throw some up here. They're kind of embarrassing. Rodrigo, it's an embarrassing photo year apparently, because I've got, this video will have a lot of embarrassing photos. But I was fit. I was fit. I was in shape, right? I was looking pretty good, right? I didn't have the confidence that I have now. I didn't have the, I still had a lot of difficulty. I don't want to tell you that like I had figured it all out, because I was like 10% of what I've got figured out today. Not even 10%, 1%, okay? I was 1% as confident. I was 1% of everything that I kind of depict today, okay? So I don't want to pretend like that happened, but what ended up happening was I had a fall from there, right? I maintained my fitness level. I did good, right? But then what ended up happening where I really had the fall, what ended up happening was that I tore my pec. I've told this story before, and it totally devastated me. I lost my identity because my identity was wrapped up in being the biggest guy at the gym. Again, I was not fit at that time. Like, I wasn't ripped like I am. I never achieved the physique level that I wanted to. A lot of that was mindset, but I was big. At one point I was close to 300 pounds, or about 300 pounds, and benching 405, actually benching more than 405. And, I was definitely like big, okay? But I tore my pec. And so after that happened, I ended up actually losing a lot of weight because I couldn't really lift. And then I actually ended up gaining a bunch of weight. And I went from like 300 pounds of, maybe 20% body fat, which 300 pounds, 20% body fat, that's pretty freaking, tank mode, okay? So I went from that to 300 pounds and more like 30% body fat or 35. I don't know. I was fat. And you could see it in those pictures, right? Where my dorky pictures with my long hair, and my skin went to shit, right? You would not have guessed that like 5 years before that or so, that I was actually a model doing modeling and acting, right? And then I was getting signed to do like modeling shoots and do runway and all this stuff, right? Not that I never made it big time in the modeling or acting. I'm not gonna pretend like I did, okay? But I was getting signed to do stuff, right? I was going on casting calls. Like I had a potentially promising career before I went full bore into software development, because I realized I wasn't going to make any fucking money doing the modeling and acting stuff, right? But my mindset actually is different now. Now I could have actually killed that shit, but I didn't believe in myself at that point. So my point is that, okay, so I had that transformation, right? And a lot of it was mental, right? You could see it in my face. You could see it in my skin. Right? I mean, like when you look at me as that person there, it was in a lot of it, again, if I could describe this, well, what I would say is that I had a false, like, some part of me did change, right? There were definitely aspects of me. I mean, you should have seen me before that, way back when in high school, when I was a dorky, whatever. But some of that change was not permanent. It was still an illusion. I was still fucking fooling myself. I was still operating at this level where I wasn't fully changing, embracing that change. Like, I changed in some ways, but there was still a lot of underlying deficiencies. There was a lot of fears. There was a lot of deficiencies that I hadn't overcome in my life, that I didn't face, a lot of obstacles I didn't face, and my identity was wrapped up in this thing. At one point it was wrapped up in my looks, at one point it was wrapped up in being the biggest guy at the gym, and my identity got fucking smashed with a fucking hammer. and I lost it all, and everything fucking collapsed. And I had to rebuild it up. I had to really, now there were some changes that were still there, right? I mean, I was a hard worker at that point. Okay, I had a lot more wisdom than I had before. I had more confidence, but a minuscule amount compared to what I have now, right? So there were some good foundations that were laid there, but I had to break it all down when that identity shattered, and I had to rebuild it up. And so how did I rebuild it up? How did I go from fat to fit in that case? A lot of it, like I said, is the mindset. A lot of it changed in my mind because I had this moment where I said, you know what? You need to build a new identity. Like there's no like you're never going to be the biggest fucking guy in the gym again. That's fine. But that doesn't need to be your identity, right? And that's where things start to change. So the best thing I could point you to is I did this video on what my life was like 7 years ago. And I know I'm linking to a lot of videos on this one, but you should watch that video, and that explains more of that. But essentially what happened was that I regained that I started reading a lot of positive books. I started looking into personal improvement and self-development. I started focusing more on the inner game, on changing, instead of just making money, instead of just like trying to change my external world, and instead of seeking validation from other people, right? I started to care about changing myself internally and growing as a person. Like what shifted from the fat John to the bodybuilder John that you see today, right, was a shift from my external validation, right? Wanting the world to validate me, wanting women to validate me, wanting other people to validate me, wanting people to tell me I did a good job, or telling me that I was worthy. That shift to wanting to actually really dig deep and grow myself and build myself as a person and become the person that I wanted to be, become the best person possible from an honest level, not just from a superficial level, but from a core identity. I really am this, I really own this level. So I started reading a lot of books, and I'm going to wrap up the video here. I could talk about this more and more, but that's a good intro. Maybe I'll do a part 2 of this video, and I'll talk more about making that actual change. But it was developing that Bulldog mindset. It was all about changing to that internal growth. And once I started to focus on that internal growth and started growing internally, I got in the best physique, the best shape I ever got in my life. I got more shit done than I ever fucking did in my life, right? I accomplished so many things. I mean, in the last year, right, I've run changes that have happened now. I've run 9 marathons, a full marathon, all kinds of things have changed and grown in my life because of that focus, and I've gotten in the best shape, I've gotten in the best physique, and it all has to do with that internal change, right, that has influenced the external. All right, so again, I'll probably do a part 2 on this if you guys are interested to hear more. Give me some questions and stuff about this that I can answer in a part 2 and talk more about that shift of going from fat to fit, to from as what was the comment? I appreciate if you make a video from fat guy to bodybuilding guy. So I want to give you guys the honest background though, so that, because it wasn't like I just had one transformation and I just went from fat guy to bodybuilding guy. I did that transformation, but there was some other curves in the road before I got there, and then recently in the last 7 years I made that transformation. I could talk more about that exact process of how that happened if you guys are interested, but I need some questions. Give me some questions that you want answered about that, and maybe I'll do a part 2. All right, that's all I got for you today. I hope that if you found this useful, you'll click that subscribe button below and click the bell so you don't miss any videos. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.